What is good, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Fundamism Podcast. I'm your host, Paul J. Long, master of shenanigans, and you're in for a good one today. Now, if you've been following along in 2021, our theme has been focusing in on the how, right? So specifically, Fundamism is all about helping empower individuals to focus and create more of what's good as opposed to what isn't. We do so by featuring fundamentals, specific and tactical things that we could all apply in our daily lives to increase the amount of joy, fun, and fulfillment in them. So today's featured fundamental is all about unleashing. But before I reveal that, I would be remiss not to shout out our sponsor, Charlie Hustle. Charlie Hustle has been with us from the jump. I myself am wearing a Fundamism Charlie Hustle What's Good shirt right now. If you know nothing of Charlie Hustle and reliving that childlike spirit that we all once embraced, go to charliehustle.com, swoop up a hoodie, maybe some sweatpants or a fine t-shirt while you're there. Support Charlie Hustle just as they have us. charliehustle.com to learn more. So our featured fundamental is something that I thoroughly enjoy doing, although I haven't mastered it. It's something that I think that we could all tap into just a little bit more, not just unleashing in others, but unleashing in ourselves. So today's featured fundamental, unleash the power of others. And to showcase how we could do that and have a real fruitful conversation about the fundamental, I'd like to introduce to you speaker, consultant, author, coach, Mr. Philip Zimmerman. What's good, Philip?
Hi, Paul. I'm doing fantastic today. Great to be on your show.
I appreciate that, brother. So the people want to know, this is a lighthearted discussion. We're all about focusing on what's good and creating more joy, fun, and fulfillment in life. So, Philip, what do you do for fun, my friend?
I was listening to your a recent show that you had on expanding with Annette and Marwana, and you talked about the Ninja Turtles. Yes. And you got to D'Angelo, and you described D'Angelo, and I said, that's me. A scientist, investigator, an engineer. I just love to solve problems. That's me. That's me. I'm a D'Angelo.
I love it. I love it. Well, so of course, you're referencing the gentleman that really thrives in creativity, right? And innovation. So, of course, very smart gentleman as well, far smarter than me. That's why I thrive more in the Michelangelo space. But I like to invite individuals like you to help close the gap and educate me on all my opportunities in life. So, how did you, before we really dive into your history and engineering background and saving the world, talk to me a little bit about when I say the fundamental or phrase, unleash the power of others. What comes to your mind?
As far as unleashing the power of others is that each of us has a potential within us that we have been given to accomplish, I believe, and allowing that individual to do that. There's so many things that have held us back in society over time and in culture and in the workplace. And that's really where my focus is in the workplace, of how to unleash in the workplace talent that is unbelievably phenomenal that is currently being restrained. So that's kind of my forte right now.
And I think that's really important. It's important to note that, the workplace right now isn't what it used to be for many reasons. But oftentimes when you unleash the power of yourself and others in the workplace, your personal life gets so much better as a result, and vice versa, right? When you figure out your path and you thrive in the things that you're passionate about, and you truly identify what you're great at while really starting to close the opportunity gaps, if you will, then life gets a whole lot better. So when we talk about unleashing the power of others, you in your wealth of business knowledge have really focused your attention on one specific group of people, so much so that you wrote a book on it. And the book, forgive my ignorance, I believe is called unleash the millennials and save the world.
That is correct.
Before we talk about millennials, why does the world need saving?
If you were to look, well, just look at the world today, and it's unbelievable. And the point being is that the technologies that we're currently under development, which we have never really seen on the planet before, have the atomic bomb and nuclear bomb could totally destroy the earth. I get that, but we're developing some technologies today that have that equal opportunity to destroy us as a society and as a culture and as a species, to destroy the planet. So I think that's the idea of saving the world, because of the coming technologies that are there. And the millennials are going to be the ones who are going to be the implementers. They're going to implement the technology, and the desire in the workplace, from my perspective, is that they do it in a way that is safe for everyone.
I love that. So there's a lot of different generations out there. We got the boomers who are currently holding down the fort.
I'm in that generation.
That's right. We got the aforementioned millennials. We got the Xers and the Ys and the Zs and every letter under the book. Why did you focus your attention on the millennials?
Great question. I was left a 20-year engineering consulting practice, had done very well, and had some resources in the bank that allowed me to pay back or pay forward really to the future. And I left the profession and I became a teacher, high school teacher. And I spent 12 years in a high school classroom teaching millennial students, because at that time they were the millennials. And what I discovered in it was the fact that they were just this unbelievably capable generation of individuals. And then I was going to develop an Institute of Leadership, which I did at the school. And so I started researching millennials. I actually got an organizational doctorate degree, and then studied millennials in particular, because that's who I was teaching in the classroom. And I discovered that in the workplace, when they entered the workplace, they were rejected. They were ridiculed. They were saying that they were worthless. All they wanted was another nickel. That they were disloyal. They were not engaged in what they did. And I just could not understand that. So I did a whole lot of, being a Donatello, I did a whole lot of research trying to figure that out. And I discovered why they're like that. And that's not what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about how you can unleash them, because there is a definitive way that you can just totally unleash their power. Now, can I make one other comment about millennials? You
listen, this is your platform, my friend. We're showcasing your goodness.
All right. If you think about I was born in 57, so that'll tell you how old I am. And I can remember it in the music that I listened to in the 60s and 70s, and then through the rest of my life. If you look at any music artist, when is the greatest time that they were producing music? It's typically between about 18 to 35. And then once they get past 35, they kind of get burned out. I'm not sure what happens to creativity. If you take that into any field, literally any field, art, I just already mentioned music, engineering, science, the greatest advancements that any individual makes is between the ages of 18 and 35. That's where the millennials are now. And what's happening in the workplace is they have really been squashed really for the last 10 years of being unleashed to utilize what they know in order to creatively innovate. So that's really what I'm just super pumped about. And Generation Z, the generation right behind them, is millennials are millennials on steroids. They're just even exponentially greater in what their capabilities are going to be once they get to the workplace.
Sure. So when we talk about the how to unleash the power of millennials, and really anybody for that matter, but specifically the millennials for the purpose of this conversation and to really showcase your expertise. You mentioned, you kind of skated over, we won't talk about why they are or we are the way that we are. Well, I think that's very important. I think it's very important for us to address and identify why we're so different, whether it's a generation or a personality, a Donatello, a Michelangelo. I think it's important to understand why we are different. That, of course, is the U in our f.u.n. acronym, understanding others' perspectives. And so specifically, the reason why I find this important So, Philip, my first speaking engagement that I ever had was a keynote. Many of our Fundamism podcast listeners have heard this story, but maybe not as detailed as what I'll reveal now. I got the opportunity to do a keynote for the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America. I had never done a keynote before, and so I diligently wrote what I thought leadership was and what all these golf course superintendents would want to hear and that would resonate with them. And I went and I delivered my content. Philip, I'm on stage for no less than 10 minutes, and I asked the question, if you had to identify the greatest leader, like pie in the sky, the best possible leader, what would it look like? So we whiteboard all of these answers, and we come up with a really robust list of characteristics that make a great leader. So then I said, if this is what defines, in our opinion, collectively, a great leader, what do you believe are all the things that are holding us back from demonstrating these traits on a regular basis? Yeah. If we know this is pie in the sky, what's keeping us from demonstrating this day in and day out? Philip, it took no less than 30 seconds for the audience to go down the path of these gosh darn millennials. It was the most interesting conversation ever. You know, I can't get them off their cell phones. I can't get them to focus on anything. They never show up to work. And what's interesting was the shift in mindset to understand that we as leaders have to adapt to our workforce. We have to communicate to others, not as we prefer to communicate to, but rather how others prefer their communication with. So let's just briefly talk about, in your experience and expertise, why are millennials the way that we perceive them to be?
It's a great question, and I could spend. Well, I wrote a whole book on it. So,
right.
If you read the book, you'll get the details. Let me give you the summary of it. One is that millennials and every other generation in the workplace want the exact same things. It's been shown by surveys, and I did my own survey to validate it. And in fact, it's true. So in the workplace and really in life, we all want the same thing. We're all humans. We're all having this shared human experience. And so this idea of fun that you talk about, the fundamism and happiness in life, you know, that we all want to enjoy that. So there is no, from a differential perspective of the generations, that's the same. We had two age shifts. Now, you know, an age is something that takes a long time to establish. We had two age shifts that occurred during the time that millennials were being born, and boomers were working in this time, and Xers were growing up during this time. The first shift, I mean, the huge shift, was a philosophical shift. I won't get into all the details of it, but 2,600 years of philosophical understanding of what is true and what is justice. Those are the basic two of them. What is true and what is justice died after World War II. That's called Western philosophy. It died. We're now living in this postmodern period. It took a couple, 30 years for it to get to the United States. By the 1980s, we were totally a postmodern culture. After modernism, that was the last stage of Western philosophy, modern philosophy, or modernism, and that died. As a result, the millennials were raised to think completely different about life than any other generation. For a long time, I mean, this is only the third time a change has happened in Western philosophy, and we haven't entered into a new philosophical period yet. It happened once in the 5th century BC, 5th century AD, started in the 6th century BC, and it shifted again in the 1600s. So this is only the third time this has happened within this. So that's huge. So let me give you the difference between the two. In the Western philosophy mindset or the modernist mindset, there is a right way to live. In the postmodern mindset, which is really anti-philosophy, there's really no truth, no justice, all that's just fabricated. It's all in your own mind. There is no right way to live. So in the modern, boomers were raised, there is a right way to live. Millennials were raised, there is no wrong way to live. That difference is huge. So that's one thing. The other thing we had a business model age change. This hasn't happened in over 400 years, and probably longer than that. We went from industrial age, where we made things with the hands and with machines, and use your mind to make personal connections, to what's now called the connected age, where everything is digital, and machines are doing more and more work. And that changed three things. This age changed three things that we all depend upon: how we handle economics, what is money, and how do we shift money around? How do you make money? Those kinds of things. It changed. The technology changed, which was pen and paper to computers to, Elon Musk is working on a thing that you stick in your brain and to put a computer in your brain, and he's almost got it. I mean, it's unbelievable. And our education changed, how we educated people. That's why when they came into the workplace, they were so different, because how they were educated. I was educated, and most Xers and all boomers probably were educated in rows and columns. Teacher stands at the front of the classrooms and subject matter experts, and the students receive from the teacher and regurgitate on tests and exams back to the teacher what the teacher has taught. Millennials were taught in a totally different environment, typically in a round environment or with groups because of the internet availability. The teacher was no longer the expert, was a facilitator. And so the students were required in class to go find the expert in this field and find out what the expert in this field says. So when a millennial entered the workforce, I'm going to explain why. It's just the situation you just talked about. Millennials were entering, when they first entered the workforce, and still today, industrial age workplaces where we have a job to do. You're assigned a job. You're assigned a desk and a chair. It might be a cubicle, but it might be an office, and you just do your job. And when you're done, bring it to me. I'll check it over, and we'll go over it from there. Millennials were not raised to enter in that environment. They were raised to, because of, this is another education thing. And I would have known this had I not been an educator. But if you start a student at first grade, right? What's your first grade learning? And then what are they going to learn in second grade? What are they going to learn in third grade? Well, all that's planned out all the way through 12th grade and then into college and even into graduate school to occupy jobs that will be available when they get to their terminus degree, whether that's a high school diploma, college degree, or advanced degree. So what jobs are available when they graduate? When you start in first grade and you're working up that rubric to get them there, when the computer came in, it was kind of like, well, what are the jobs going to be when the computer comes in? And so they started working on industrial age stuff for the computer. When the internet came in, that was the game changer. They said, what's going to be the job when the internet comes in? And then when Google came on, Google's been phenomenal in its just influence on the world. When it came online, it was like, who knows what's going to be? AI. So they started teaching students not to enter a job that was currently available. I think it was in 2016, head of the Duke University education program wrote a book. In the book, she said 60% of the jobs the lower school students will occupy in 15 to 16 years have not been invented. 60% of the jobs have not been invented. So how are we going to educate students to occupy jobs that haven't been invented? They started educating them different than it had been in the current workforce was experiencing. So when they entered the workforce, they were asking different questions than the people in the workforce had ever heard before.
Sure. So is what you just defined or kind of laid out? Forgive me. I mean, I am a complete novice when it comes to all of this. And obviously you are an educator. So I'm looking to be educated, as is our Fundamism Podcast listeners, or as our podcast listeners. Is that the Millennium change cycle that you just kind of identified?
Oh, yeah. Well, the millennial change cycle is this has not happened. The significance of you can see it culturally happening right now in our country and globally. I mean, there's a cultural phenomenon going on, and people are saying socialism, communism, whatever. This is all part of this millennial change cycle. That this shift, these two shifts. If you would have had a philosophical shift, but the business age would have stayed the same, well, we might have been able to handle it. Or a business age shift when the philosophy stayed the same. I think we might have been able to handle it. I think with both of them shifting at the same time, you have an entire culture that thinks, like 180 degrees different how to do things than the current culture. This has not happened if you go back historically, I'm a Donatello, so I like to do a lot of research. I was trying to find the last time this has happened. And the last time this has happened is probably over 1,000 years ago, that a generation like the millennials, and of course, Gen Z is millennials on steroids. So it's a generation like the millennials has entered the world and entered the culture of the world. And it's just, they're going to change everything. I mean, everything that's going to change. Everything's going to change. And that's why I say probably about 2040, if I'm alive then, you'll probably be alive in 2040, you will not recognize the workforce. If you went back to 2021 and said, okay, here's the 2021 workforce and here's the 2020, and it's just like 14 years away. It's not long away.
Right.
It's going to be completely different. It's going to be completely different.
Well,
you wouldn't be able to work there.
Right. Well, if we don't change, if we don't change our mindset and how to unleash the power of said millennials and others. So, before we talk about the how, because that's what everybody wants to know, and that's our real premise for 2021. You hit on something that really, really resonates with me. And it's something that I think that we as a society really struggle with, especially in the workplace. So, I mentioned my first keynote ever. And, one of the falsehoods out there is that millennials they can't be motivated. They're not motivated by anything. I can't figure out what they're motivated by. So when you really dial it in and you start asking questions about remove millennials, what anybody's motivated by, you typically get some common responses. Money. I like the paycheck. I like things. So I like to buy things. I ultimately am motivated by power or the potential to create change. Right. So what I found is all of those things could be broken down to one specific thing, and that is shared experience, right? If you think that you're motivated by money, what you're truly motivated by is the experience that money brings you, or the experience that money can buy. If you're motivated by positions of power or creating change, well, that's all experience that generates memories and fondhoods and moments where you could pat yourself on the back and say, we did the dang thing. So I love knowing that everybody, based on what I heard you say, is driven by the same thing, which is shared experience.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It totally is. We're all totally driven by the same thing. Now I will give you here's another key. I mean, this is just, I've looked in literature trying to find these things, and it's because I'm part of my gift. I have a gift. It is to be able to see an issue and find these disparate pieces, assimilate them together, and then get something to come out of it that is just totally new. That's kind of what I saw. That in this, as for the boomers, it has to do with meaning, purpose, and calling of life.
Yes.
I'm talking about this human experience. We're talking about a human experience. What's the meaning of life? What's my purpose in life? What's my calling in life? Boomers and most Xers were not given that option to ask those questions. Meaning in life is you stay out of trouble. That's pretty simple. Purpose in life is you get an education, get a job, get married, have kids if you can, be great, buy a car, buy a house, have fun, go on vacation, and then when you retire, make sure you have enough money when you retire, and take care of others along the way. That was my purpose. There was no other purpose. Calling was, just whatever I worked in for a long time. People used to work in a job for 35 and 40 years, and that was kind of their calling in life. Because of how millennials were educated. Remember, boomers and most Xers were raised that there is a right way to live. And they were educated in a classroom that said, there is your right way to live, Johnny or Susan. This is the way that you should live your life. Millennials were not provided that anywhere by the culture, by their education, typically by their family, because boomers were absent parents. It was just terrible, horrible what we did to our kids. We were absent parents. Yeah. And so no one really gave them that guidance. But they still have in themselves, because we're human, we all share this human experience, that they know that in fact, they were told by their educators, you have a purpose, Johnny or Sally, and you can do anything you want. And your goal in life is to find out what that purpose is. And you may be able to discover it through the meaning that you find and what your vocational. So they have been searching for this whole thing called purpose in their life. And if you don't have a way to find that purpose, it can be Is my purpose to work, flip burgers? Well, no. Is my purpose to work, so they get an education the best they can. They graduate, they go get a job. And the first question they ask themselves after about 6 months in the job is this really what I'm supposed to be doing?
Sure.
A purpose question. It's a deep philosophical, spiritual question. And my life doesn't really seem to have any meaning. Oh my gosh. This is the part of unleashing, because in the workplace, you can provide the millennial, really the boomers, we weren't even thinking about these questions, but for the people who are thinking about these questions, millennials and Gen Z, man, we could give it to them on steroids, right. Meaning, purpose, confirm their vocational calling. It's unbelievable. This whole thing of work-life balance. One of the 3 things that millennials said that they wanted, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen a Gen Z survey lately, but I studied a lot of millennial surveys. Back in 2010, the top 3 drivers for engagement, productivity, and loyalty was opportunities for career development. They wanted to be developed. Opportunities for advancement and work-life balance. Those 3. That was in 2010. In 2020, Gallup did a survey, very similar survey, huge survey. Guess what the top 3 drivers were? Exactly the same thing.
Didn't shift.
They wanted development, they wanted advancement, they wanted work-life balance. What that showed me was there was a 10-year period where they didn't get what they wanted.
Right.
We didn't give it to them. I'm talking about the boomers. We didn't give it to them, and
right.
we're not about to give it to them. That's the problem. That's why I'm saying the boomers and the older Xers need to unleash this generation, because they are the most educated generation in human history. They are everything we could ever imagine that we would hope that we could be educationally. They are there, and they are at the prime time of their creativity and innovation. Let them go. Let them do it.
Therein lies the rub, is we have a generation of leaders that has historically gotten by, highly successful, I might add, at painting within the lines, at establishing boundaries, understanding exactly what the desired outcome was, and going and doing it, because it was always very black and white. Yeah, and now, to your point, in this postmodern era, we have a newer generation of folks that really has been told anything is possible. Write your own story, live in the gray. And our leadership, as evidenced by the survey that you just revealed, and the 10-year gap where nothing really changed at all because everybody still wants development, advancement, and work-life balance, that tells us that our leadership isn't or hasn't really thrived in adapting to this new style. So let's talk about it. How do we unleash the power of said millennials?
I'll give you an example, and then I'll go through it for you. In my book, I have this whole idea of a virtual workforce, and that was really been part of this work-life balance. Millennials were raised, going to coffee shops and working 24/7. So they do their homework in groups, and they would go to a coffee shop, and they never stopped working. They have never stopped working 24/7. I mean, they're playing games or whatever. So that the idea of having to go sit at a desk, right, for a job, when between 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the 8 in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon is ridiculous. Look, I got something to do at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll be gone till noon, but I'll finish it up tonight. And they would. I mean, that's just how they've lived their life. This whole idea. So when the pandemic hit and remote working started, the executives I work with, they were freaking out, saying, "Oh my gosh, we're going to be crippled because all these people are working from Zoom and working from home. What's going to happen?" Every one of them said what they were most surprised by was that their productivity did not only drop, it actually increased. When their workforce was sent home, their productivity increased. They said, when we come back from this pandemic, we're going to reduce our office space. We're going to allow work-life flexibility. If people want to work from home, we're going to give them that flexibility to do that. There's some people that need to come into the office, but if these people who don't need to come into the office want to work from home, we're going to let them work from home. It's unbelievable. And so I had it in the book that's coming, but the pandemic just forced it. And as a result of that, the pandemic is forcing because of the workforce, how the workforce is handled, the pandemic is forcing this to happen. And millennials are not going to go back. What do you say? They're not going to take a step back and say, okay, let's go back to the way things were. They're not going back to the way things were. 50% of the workforce in 2020 in the United States and globally is millennial. By 2025, that's just 4 years away, 75% of the global workforce will be millennial. That could just blow you away. 75% in just 4 years? Are you kidding me? I see millennials around, but really 75% is part of the boomer. I call it an hourglass effect. The boomer generation, about 80 million. Xers, about 40 million. Millennials, about 80 million. Those are just round numbers. Mm-hmm. There's only about half as many Xers as boomers and or millennials. So half the boomers have already retired, 2021, a little more than half. So let's say 40 million boomers have retired. There was 40 million Xers. So in the workplace today, an Xer is probably already occupying a boomer spot, whatever, because a boomer retired, they needed somebody to replace them.
Sure.
For the next 40 million boomers that retire, there's no more Xers left. Theoretically, maybe they'll go from one boomer job to another boomer job, but who's going to take that boomer job that they took before? The only generation there is millennial. And that's why this in 2025, they're going to be 75% of the workforce, because it's not that Xers didn't go into for your listeners. It's not that Xers didn't go into accounting or business or finance or engineering or education. They were never born. And this is a global experience. They were never born. Of course, in the United States, Vietnam War, when they were being born, had the Vietnam War, birth control came in, abortion came in the United States and also globally. So they can't say that was what happened. I'm not sure if it is or not. But what we can say is globally, the X generation is very small. That's why this visa is trying to get these visas for people to come and work in the United States. It's not about immigrant workers, to work the fields. It's about getting high technology Xers into the United States to work in these technology companies, because they are just not here. They were never born. And so that's really the visa issue that's ongoing right now.
So knowing that there's going to be this complete turnover in leadership specifically in the next 4 years, and the workforce in general, but I would have to assume that if boomer leadership positions are replaced by millennials, then maybe a byproduct of that is millennials are managed a little bit more to that shared human experience and that gray area that you referenced before. Is that part of the how?
Oh yeah. The how is this? Okay. Remember, the millennials are seeking meaning, purpose, and calling in their life. These three, meaning, purpose, and calling, are directly tied. And again, I just did a lot of research. It's just one of those people. Meaning is directly tied to their engagement and work. And the reason why I love this, it's work-life balance. We work more than half of our lives we're at work, because if we're not at work, we're thinking about work.
Sure.
So our meaning is directly tied to our engagement. Our productivity is directly tied to our purpose is directly tied to our productivity. And our calling, what's our calling in life, is directly tied to our loyalty. So you got engagement, productivity, and loyalty, those three. That answers this meaning, purpose, and calling. So how do you get that? Well, the thing that gets productivity, the function of the engagement, productivity, and loyalty are a function of these three things: alignment, that's engagement. So your alignment is enhanced. Your engagement is enhanced by proper alignment to make sure that you're the right person doing the right job. Doesn't matter what the job is. Are you the right person to do that job? What's your personality profile? What's your temperament? Do you like doing this? That's the first one. Once they are aligned and they start because now they're doing what they know how to do and what they like to do, they're going to become engaged. And that's going to provide their life meaning. Oh my gosh, who knew? And then if you develop them, now you provide them development. So now they're engaged, and now they're getting developed, and they got really proficient at what they're doing, and now they're getting very masterful at what they're doing. That's going to increase their productivity, because now they're not only know how to do it, but now they know how to do it better, faster, cheaper, and a new technology that nobody ever thought of. That's the big thing. They're going to come up with a new technology nobody ever thought of, because now they've gotten really good at doing it. They're going to say, why are we doing it like this? Don't you know that this is out there and it's going to change everything? Their productivity goes up. That provides them purpose. That's why I'm here. Oh, I've got meaning. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. and look at the stuff I'm creating. I mean, just look at an artist or I mean, we can see it when people do stuff, art, they make music or they draw a picture or they carve a statue and they just say, that was me. I did that. Or a bricklayer. I mean, a bricklayer gets to take his grandkids, 30 years later, say, I built that building. That's this whole purpose. That was my purpose, to build that building. That comes in productivity. And the last one is, as they get really good at this, suddenly they get called up, like you probably get called up, because you're a vocational authority in your field. They want to talk to Paul. So then suddenly they become a vocational authority. And then they go, that was my whole calling in life to become. It's just unbelievable. Now, I've got two. In this research, I did two. I did a subject matter expert from the world, and I did a subject matter expert from a spiritual basis. I happen to be a spiritual person and a faith-based person. So I looked at Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes, and then I looked at Aristotle from early, one of the, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, philosopher, one of the earliest, most quoted philosophers. They say he was probably one of the greatest philosophers ever. How did they find happiness? What is happiness? Because happiness was a big thing in the workplace, and all the journal articles I was reading that millennials were after. They wanted workplace happiness. How do we develop happiness? It's absolutely fascinating. I'll go with the secular perspective first, Aristotle. So, because you want to have fun at work, right? You want to have fun. Sure, let's have fun. 100%. So you got to be happy to be fun. If you're not going to be out there miserable having fun, but if you're really happy, and then you can have a blast. Oh my gosh, millennials! If millennials had a blast at work, can you imagine what the productivity would be and what their engagement would be? And it's not because they want trinkets and toys and a coffee shop and all. No, they want to answer the question why. Why is something being done? Which is the very base reason. What's the absolute reason why this is being done? And then the how. Because once they know the why and the how it's currently being done, then they can think of the technology that's not yet been invented, and they can invent it, and suddenly they'll be a billionaire. I mean, that's just how they've been taught.
Sure.
They're one app away from being a billionaire. So Aristotle said, happiness is experienced when appropriate excellence is well performed in actions taken while living a virtuous life. That's my summary of what he said. What he said was 4 sentences long. But basically, happiness is experienced when appropriate action is when appropriate excellence is well performed in actions taken while living a virtuous life. So this is during work. Happiness is found at work. Oh my gosh, happiness is found at work. Are you kidding me? Yes, Aristotle is saying happiness is found doing what you do excellently for the right reason, in the right way, as a function of your life, a virtuous life. Yeah. And that's when you're happy, because he was trying to figure out what was happiness. Everybody's trying to figure out what makes people happy. Okay, Solomon had a great statement. He said, he was really upset. He did a lot of investigation. He had money and everything. He investigated everything to try to figure out where his happiness found. What's the meaning of life? And he said he hated life, and he hated work, the toil of work, because you'll work your entire life to build up this fortune so that you could live on this fortune forever. And then you die and somebody inherits it, and you have no ability to control what they do with it. He said, I've wasted my whole life so somebody else could get what I made. That was his basic conclusion. He hated work. He hated life. This is horrible. I got all this stuff that I acquired, and now I'm going to die, and somebody else is going to get it. I can't control it. So he said he wasted his life because he was working on building up all this stuff. Then he discovered, he said, a man could do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work. This is from the hand of God. Now, this is Solomon speaking. He's looked at everything to try to figure out what's the meaning of life. And this is what he said. Again, a man can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work. Why work? Well, when we are here to work, we all work, we do something, whether you're playing video games or whatever, you're working in a video game, I tell you, but it's just the whole, we have this drive to work, Okay. So this is what Solomon said that God gives us. Solomon calls them God's gifts of labor.
Okay.
Now just think about this. He just said it's nothing better for you to eat and drink and find satisfaction in your work. So here's the things that God gives us in our gifts of labor, according to Solomon. God gives us satisfaction. Have you ever been doing what you're doing, speaking? You ever been satisfied in that? Of course you have been. Enjoyment. Have you ever had enjoyment when you just got off the stage? Oh man, that was great. It was awesome. Oh yeah. Just like unbelievable. The audience went crazy and everything. It's like, what did I just do? You enjoyed yourself. That's what work's all about. Experiencing good. Right? Not experiencing bad, not experiencing pain, maybe helping somebody else, just doing something good for somebody else. I mean, in your work, helping mentor or coach a colleague or a peer or somebody underneath you. And you see the result of what they're doing as a result of your influence on them, where they're going. Rejoicing. Again, this is the whole idea, rejoicing together as a community, right? Let's rejoice. We just did great. We beat last quarter's numbers flat out. Anyway. This is the cool one. Time flies. God has given us that time flies by. You're not watching the clock like, oh my gosh, it's still 5:15. Tick, 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 tick. Oh man, you're like, oh my gosh, it's 5:00 already. Whatever happened to the day? Because you're just having a blast at work, doing what you're doing because you're engaged, you're productive, you're loyal. You're just, oh, can you tell I'm excited about this? And the last one, Solomon says, God gives us a joy of heart. Now, I say all that from the perspective that these are two ancient writers, because today, culturally, nothing's true. Can't believe anything. So let's go back 6,000 years and find out what they were saying back then, right? Because both of these have lived for 6,000 years. These philosophies, until 1948, when Western philosophy ended, this Aristotle quote was key to that idea of truth and justice and happiness in the world. Aristotle was always referenced. In the spiritual sector, the Solomon is still there, but all I have to say is to try to find somebody today to find you what happiness is. I didn't go there. I went old, but what it told me was this idea of work-life balance that the millennials are looking for, and that we're all looking for, by the way. If you have a boomer out there, he's listening on the radio, and you happen to take off at 2:30 because you went and played golf, because it was Friday afternoon, you had a group call you up there, we're going to go play golf, and you left the office and left everybody behind. And yeah, but I earned it. You did not earn it. You did not earn it. You took it, right? You took it.
Yeah.
And you should have. And you should have. And maybe you're free to take it. That's fine.
Yeah.
But it's not because you earned it. Okay. But it is, you're living that work-life balance.
Yes.
Millennials want the same thing. They want that work-life balance. Give them their work-life balance. But all that to say is how you do this in the workplace is you align your talent, you provide them development for their chosen career path, and you advance them. And you better advance them really quick. And when you do that, they turn on. I mean, if you ask a millennial to here, I've got a problem. I need somebody to solve. Can you go off and solve this problem for me? Oh my gosh, that's what they're waiting for you to say.
For sure. Well, listen, you're talking about things near and dear to my heart. Some of the philosophic geniuses that you referenced. Obviously, Aristotle. I'm a big fan of Socrates, the Socratic method. Not instilling or forcing my opinion on others, but rather just asking a ton of questions to find ways to get people to self-discover why things are the way that they are. But, what you just touched on, and specifically Aristotle and Solomon, and I'm gonna reference specifically your Aristotle piece. In happiness is doing what you do or doing what you love and doing it really well in a virtuous way. That is fundamism. That is also the F in fun, your personal foundation. Like you talk about alignment, you talk about engagement, the development of others and advancement of this workforce. If you want to truly engage folks, create experience, showcase what folks are good at, allow them to align themselves to a cultural mission, to a purpose, a calling, if you will. And that's why organizations, I'm certain that you could speak to this far better than I, but individuals and organizations that I've seen that have had a ton of success in their respective space are ones that are very transparent about their affection for one another and love and kindness and virtue and a moral compass and doing the right thing and showcasing others. Because the one thing that we'll never get enough of in this world is appreciation. And if I'm a millennial, a boomer, a Z, it doesn't matter, name any letter, that's who I want to work for. So, I'm fascinated by this whole discussion. I did a little research, which I rarely do because I want to engage my guest, in this case, you, Philip, just as the audience does, and experience together. But, something caught my eye on your website that I really want to learn more about it. It's this concept of C4. And oh my gosh, like I read it and I was like, boom, like I feel the energy. And specifically C4, you reference communicate, cooperate, collaborate, and co-create. Where did that concept come from?
It just appeared in my brain one day, and there's a fifth one, which is celebrate, but the C4 had the nice explosive sound, so I couldn't say C5. But so I just say celebrate plus celebrate. But it's this whole idea of that if we can communicate, if we could just sit down, just like you're talking about, not sit down and we need to have a serious conversation. But sometimes you maybe need to have a serious conversation. But can we just have a conversation and just be totally transparent, open with each other about what's going on? And these are the things that I'm seeing, and do you tell me what I'm seeing? And then as my feelings get hurt because this is part of my personality profile. Don't take it wrong. Or if I bark at you because that's part of my personality profile, don't take it wrong. It's just my personality reacting at you. But the whole idea of communicate is so that then they can cooperate together, work together on something. Millennials want to work with each other. They were trained to work in teams. That's how they were educated. That's all the way through college. They've been working on teams. Let them work on teams. Cooperate, collaborate. This is where they're working on teams on the same thing, right? So they're cooperating and working on the same thing, but now they're collaborating because I'm working on this and you're working on that. Can we collaborate together? And you can provide me because I need some of that on mine and you need some of mine on yours. It's that whole idea of collaboration. And then to co-create. Because as they start working together on each other's stuff, on their particular expertise, on what they're working on, suddenly they're going to go, you know what? We can circumvent both of these by doing a new one that does them both. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And that's where they co-create. And then once they do that, then they celebrate. It's just I think that every conversation that I have with someone and I'm talking about what they should do with their millennials and how they advance their talent and develop their talent. I said, just enter with the C4 in mind whenever you have a conversation. Communicate, cooperate with them, collaborate with them, and co-create with them. If you have institutional knowledge, boomers and Xers have institutional knowledge that is irreplaceable. When you walk out of the door, that's gone. It might be in a file somewhere, but no one's ever going to, if it's not put in a digital format in the next 3 years, it's going to be gone too. It's going to be thrown out with the trash. So whatever institutional knowledge you have, allow a millennial to do something with it. Tell them what you have. Tell them why you have it. This is why I've stored all this information in my brain, because this is what I think I can do with it. What do you think you can do with it? And watch them just go to work. It's unbelievable.
That hamster wheel just starts turning.
Man.
Just as yours is about to, as we start to wrap up our time together with some 5 off-the-wall questions.
All right.
So we want to get to know you in your most authentic form, outside of just your business acumen, which I know you have a lot of. So I know that you've created several businesses. Which one is your favorite?
It's one that it's kind of inactive right now. I would say my coaching practice, right? Because that's what I'm doing right now. Coaching is consulting, but really a golf academy, open a golf academy.
Wow.
That was a lot. It's still a lot of fun. At times I just say, I'm going to go back and give up everything and go back to the driving range and teach golf. So
do you still play regularly?
Oh yeah.
What's your handicap?
It's about an 8.
Okay.
8.5.
All right. I've never shot an under 100, but I thoroughly enjoy shared human experience. See?
Oh my God. It teaches humility. That's for sure. It teaches humility. I just always encourage my players whenever because I also coached a team, but is to just look at the pro scorecard. And on a pro's scorecard, you'll see lots of bogeys, but you'll also see lots of birdies. So everybody, it doesn't matter the level that you are.
Sure.
They just know how to get out of trouble. High handicappers and myself, we just can't get out of trouble.
That's it. Story of my life. What's one thing that you're super proud of that not many people know about you, Philip?
Super proud of, not many people know about, oh my gosh.
Right.
Well, yeah. Well, I've been married for going on 44 years.
That's a pretty proud accomplishment. That should be
two beautiful daughters and to the same woman.
That's important note.
Yeah,
Which is this begs the perfect follow-up question. There's a misnomer out there that engineers don't like to laugh or have fun. What makes you laugh?
What makes me laugh? Just a good joke. I mean, a good Irish joke. Now, of course, down here they have Cajun jokes, good Cajun joke. But I had a brother, older brother. He's deceased now, but he had 7 siblings, and he was the jokester in the family. I guess every family has one. And he used to have this Irish accent, and he would just he would just say the first word, and I'd start laughing. I just get these giggling, they just start giggling. Oh, John, stop. And he's like, I haven't even started yet. I know. It's like he's tickling me. I just love that.
I have a buddy like that by the name of Charlie Blackman, who coincidentally is from Louisiana. He actually married my wife and I as the pastor, and he is the best joke teller in the world. And part of what makes it so amazing is that really deep, amazing Southern accent. And to your point, he says the first or second word, and I'm already just giggling like a schoolboy. You mentioned music earlier. Growing up, music, the stuff that I listen to, you said. What is your favorite genre of music? And if we want to get more detailed, who would be one of your favorite artists?
Genre would be the 70s.
Okay.
Oh gosh, America or Eagles in that genre. Sure. But and I haven't really listened to modern music because really there's a lot of reasons. But some of the music coming out today is really good.
Sure.
But if you just listen to radio in general, they play a lot of 60s, 70s, and 80s music versus the last 30. We've had 30 more years of music. Where's all that music?
Right.
So that was, and I just say from a perspective of, if you looked at those artists in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when they wrote their music, I'm just saying this for your audience, when they wrote their music, and especially if you're a boomer and you're listening right now, and you're remembering, oh yeah, I remember when they wrote that music, and you know that they were 22 years old when they were on tour. And you've got 22-year-old millennials or Z talent sitting at the desk, and they're just sitting there doing a job.
Right.
That's the talent that they have.
True.
If you just unleashed it, you could have a rock and roll band in your own office. Have some real fun. Man,
that's the perfect final thought, but I can't end there. We have one final top 5 question. So as a coach / consultant, speaker, author, and just expert in your field, what's one of the moments as a coach that really sticks out in your mind, that really justified or made you feel as though you were doing what you were proud of, or what you felt like you were called upon in doing?
I think I had a client that I worked with for several years, and I hadn't heard from him for a while, and he called me, and we stay in contact, but we just hadn't had any contact for a while. And so he emailed me the other day and said, "Hey, Philip, I'd really like to get together." And so I called him back, and he lives in New Zealand. So it's kind of a long distance client and friend. And he just said, "Philip, I just really loved the time that we spent together." Now, we were coaching the whole time. He said, "I just really loved this time we spent together." That I think it's just having a conversation with somebody, because I'm an inquisitive person, right?
Sure.
So that's just by nature, trying to figure out what makes them tick. And so I love to ask questions that they're not necessarily provocative questions. They don't really expect somebody to answer. Are you going to ask that question? I said,
right.
Yeah, just you don't have to answer it. I'm just going to ask the question. And what it does is it allows us, again, you and I are having a shared human experience right here on this show, shared human experience. When you get vulnerable and you release something that is deep inside of you, and you have to feel in a safe place in order to do that, and you release something deep inside of you, that the release that has of energy in your body especially if it's something that you're disappointed in or frustrated by, or even just the opposite, excited about. It does something to us physiologically and spiritually. That's what he missed. He said, I just missed that. I just want to talk. And I said, well, would you like to start coaching again? He said, well, yeah, we can do that too. But he said, I just love that. I just loved our relationship. So I think that's what I loved about what I do.
Yes.
Is the relationships I make.
You create shared human experience. You allow people to feel comfortable in vulnerability, and you ask questions that force people to think. And that's something that I find in our society is more rare than it should be. So kudos to you, my friend. You've generated a lot of interest by me. Knowing that you have done the same with our Fundamism podcast listeners, and they would like to learn more about you, where should they go?
It's the simplest place is, they can find me on LinkedIn, but under Dr. Philip M. Zimmerman, but just go to unleashthemillennials.com. It's got links to my business page and everything. Unleashthemillennials.com.
My guy. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. I'm sure that this is the beginning of several conversations that we'll have in the near future. Of course, to the Fundamism podcast listener, the fundamental was unleash the power of others. And while we focus the bulk of our attention on millennials, know that just as Philip stated, there's really not anything that we said that didn't pertain to nearly everybody in life. Everybody's driven by shared human experiences. Everybody thrives when they feel passion and in alignment with something that moves them, that they feel great about. And when indeed you celebrate them, not part of the C4 package, but rather the plus addition, when you celebrate them for such and you advance them in their career while giving them development, well, ultimately, people are going to feel good and they are going to unleash the power within. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for tuning in today to the Fundamism Podcast. We challenge you to go out and create some fun in your life and in the lives of others. Until we see you on the flip side, be safe, smile often, have fun, and deuces.